much. You've put me on the stage. So this is the first time I've done anything like this. So bear with me a little bit. My story. How did I become a director of Honeywell Aerospace in the UK? So I'm gonna go back a while now. I started life at a comprehensive school in Solihull, just south of Birmingham. I wasn't the highest performer there. I was shy. I wouldn't describe myself as a high performer. I was an average student, an average pupil. I was interested in technical drawing. Back in those days, it was with a pencil and a drawing board before computers. I'm not that old, but it feels like I am these days. I enjoyed metalwork. My dad was an engineer, and I decided to go down the apprenticeship route as opposed to going to sixth form and doing A levels and going to university. I figured my attributes were more practical than theoretic. So I started applying for apprenticeships with a number of companies around where I lived. I had a few rejections. Some were disappointing, some were kind of expected. I went for interviews and did tests and all of that. And what I found was that there was a similarity in some of those tests, so they actually became easier the more I went for. I was taken on, or I chose to select a company called TI Reynolds. The TI group back in the day was quite a large UK-based company. They were into everything. They owned rally cycles, they owned Russell Hobbs, all sorts of different products. But TI Reynolds was an engineering company in Birmingham, and it was a 5-year apprenticeship. I spent the first year what we call off-the-job training, so that was full-time at college, and there we did a combination of practical skills. I mean, really basic practical skills like how to file metal, how to use a lathe, a milling machine, all of these tools that create product. And then once a week was a theory. So we did maths, we did physics. Maths was never my strong point at school, so I kind of struggled initially with the application of maths. Why do we do maths? But to see it in context, to see how it's used, and to see how it designs product that you can use, the light bulb came on. That the penny dropped. I suddenly had a better understanding of the theory and how it was applied. So being an apprentice, there was a group of us taken on each year, and I made some really good friends there. Some of which I still have, 40 years later. And that increased my confidence. As I say, I was never an outgoing sort of person. I was quite shy. So to have that group of friends who were all sort of similar backgrounds, and we were all studying and working hard along the same sort of courses, that kind of gelled with me personally. So I was particularly interested, as I say, in technical drawing, and early 1980s, which for some of you probably study in history these days, but for me it was that was when I lived. I was very interested in computer aided design, CAD, and it was in its early days back then. And I struck up an interest. There was a machine in the corner of the office that nobody seemed to go near. But as an apprentice, I was kind of I was interested, so I pulled back the screens and I had a play with it. And during that time, I obviously, expressing that interest, I was able to apply it, and suddenly the company took interest in me as somebody who, this young guy, he can do this sort of stuff. So we give him more and more responsibility, and that helped me as well in terms of building up my confidence and being able to speak in meetings. I mean, hey, look at me now. I'm talking to thousands of you. I've never done this before, so I'd have turned cold years ago just at the thought of this. But that apprenticeship was 5 years, and I went around each of the departments in the company. So I did a little bit of the practical stuff on the shop floor. I did a little bit in the design office, designing the tools and the products to make those things on the shop floor. We talked about sales environments. What do those functions do? There's lots of elements to an engineering company, at least, that are all gel together as a team. And as an apprentice, you get to experience each one of those in turn, and you get to understand what they do and how they interact with other departments, and how the company operates as well. So, why do we do what we do? At the end of the day, we work for a business, and a business is there to make money. So, but the products in engineering are the ones that are interesting me. I think it's taking risks and investigating things and trying to understand how things work. I don't know how many of you have come across something at home which is broken, and you think, well, okay, it's broken, so I'm going to take it apart and I'm going to figure out how it works. Nothing gained, nothing ventured, so it's already broken, so you can't make it any worse. But to try and figure out how it works was something I used to do as well, and that's kind of a core really of being an engineer, is having that intuition and that intuitivity of trying to understand things and getting to the facts. That's also a key part of being an engineer. So back to my apprenticeship. After 5 years, I'd gained myself a little reputation of being good at this new technology of computer-aided design, and I was taken on full time after that, and again in sort of a design and a development role. So now I'm drawing it, but then going outside with my overall on and making it. One of the key learning elements of being a designer is to actually have somebody be able to make what you've drawn. That's very satisfying to see, that you can see the product, you can see the actual finished item, and you think, hey, I thought of that, I drew it, I explained it to somebody, and somebody's made it, and it works. I mean, that's a big thrill. Great feedback on them doing that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you do this to earn a living. So I did an extra 3 or 4 years, going around slightly different departments, but still from a manufacturing engineering perspective. And then I moved out to a customer of ours to follow up on a job that we'd sold them, and it wasn't working. And they called us up. They say, hey, this thing you've just sold us doesn't work. You need to come out and figure it out. And I went to this other company who was a customer of ours, and I thought, well, this is a great environment. It's their product range was massive compared to ours. We were very simple, kind of one-piece products. Applications were either cylinders for JCB diggers, the big cylinders, the hydraulic cylinders. We used to make the cylinders for that. We used to make aircraft rings. These are the circular structural parts that are in an aircraft engine, and they're getting bigger and bigger in diameter. So we used to, a customer of ours was Rolls-Royce, for example, and we would make also the components inside the jet engine. And this again gave an opportunity to understand, well, how does a jet engine work? You just kind of, you logically follow it on. Where's my product going to? How does it interact with other people's, other suppliers' parts? All parts of being an engineer. I moved to that company. That customer offered me a position. I took a risk. It was actually less salary, and I'd got a mortgage at that time, and cash was pretty rare. Every penny I earned was basically paying bills and my mortgage. So to take a slight cut in pay was a big risk, but that risk paid off. Within six months to a year later, I was actually earning more than I was if I had stayed at the original place at Reynolds. The new company obviously saw some potential, so they offered to sponsor me to go through to achieve my degree. I'd achieved a higher national diploma as part of my apprenticeship. I did some night courses, just kind of part-time, one evening a week. It was more of a social event than anything else. 3 or 4 of us would join the queue in September and pick a course that interested us, and we'd go do that because the company would sponsor that sort of thing, and it was something to do, and it was interesting. But this new company sponsored me through a full-time degree over 3 years in mechanical engineering, and that really took me on an extra level in terms of my understanding. It was a much more in-depth study, and as I said earlier, I didn't go down the sixth form and the university route. I went the apprenticeship route, but those paths converged. probably 5, 6, 7 years later, but they converged. So I was a mature student at that point. But that new company gave me then the experience of their customers. And their customers were aircraft manufacturers, British Aerospace, Rolls-Royce, with the engine side of it. But British Aerospace and Airbus down at Bristol, and also up north in North Wales, were key customers of ours. And there's nothing more enjoyable to me to actually see an aircraft being built. If anybody out there, when you were younger, maybe you used to build airfix models. You get all the component parts and you have the plans and you put these things together and you get the finished product. Well, to see that real scale, normally I'd have only seen an aircraft at an airport if I was going on holiday somewhere. But to actually crawl inside it whilst it was being built was fascinating, and to see our product being fitted at various places. We were designing valves for controlling the air that comes from the jet engine, and if you've ever sat on an aircraft, above your head there's a small gasper, little vent that allows some cool dry air to flow over to keep your nice and cool. Well, at Honeywell we now make that system that converts the hot, very hot, high pressure air that's coming from the engine, the compressor stage of the engine, to that cool, breathable, dry air that's keeping you alive on the aircraft and keeping you comfortable on the aircraft. To see all of that built into an aircraft is fascinating. It's a real eye opener. But one of my roles was to deal with problem solving. So customers would phone up and they'd say, hey, we've ordered this part, you've delivered this part, but it's not working. And that would be the challenge. So they'd phone me up, they say, hey Dave, there's another challenge here for you. And that enabled me to liaise more with a wide variation of customers and basically fixed their problems. And in aerospace, you have to be very, very careful on what you design at every single stage. Every part is thoroughly analyzed, it's tested. The product itself has a unique identifier on it, as a part number and a serial number. And the purpose behind that is if there's any problem on an aircraft that is deemed to be a systemic problem, it could be on another aircraft. As soon as we find that, we can find out when it was built, right the way back to even melting the metal in the foundries. We can trace it right the way back to there, because there may be a problem that could be on multiple aircraft. And aerospace is the safest of any form of transportation that we have on the planet. So finding a problem early and understanding why it became a problem, understanding the root cause and fixing the root cause before it becomes a bigger problem. Some of you may have seen something recently with Boeing and the 737 MAX, and the fact that it wasn't done really correctly. So that when they had one accident, wasn't really anything done. Another accident occurred, and then a third accident occurred, and then the whole fleet globally was grounded until they fixed the problem and found out why it was causing the problems in the first place. That's what aerospace is all about. So we have to do things from a fine level of detail and fix those problems. But from my perspective, I was able to travel. I traveled to the US a lot. I traveled out as far as India, all to customer bases, multiple places around Europe, into Scandinavia, and this was great. I'm kind of I'm in my early 30s now, and I'm on a plane all the time, flying to all sorts of places, and trying to build relationships and figure out what the problems and solving those problems. So my career then grew over a period of about 7 or 8 years, where I got offered a position that was actually not my boss's position, but his boss's position. It's a bit unusual, and that took me from being just I'll say a run-of-the-mill design development engineer who was kind of troubleshooting all over the place, to a head of engineering. This is something I wouldn't have even dreamt about doing. It gave me the opportunity to organize others figure out, I've got 5 people now, I've got 10 people now, I've got 15 people now. It grew as a team. And I was able to look at new graduates or new people that were coming through their apprenticeships. People I'm looking, 10 years behind me now, as the people coming up behind me. And I looked at people in terms of, okay, what could they do theoretically, but how do they apply themselves? What is it about them that is exciting? And it's their personality as well as their capability. If somebody's got a real spark about them, and they're enthusiastic about something, I like that, because you can then train somebody like that. If they've got the right mindset, if they want to learn, then you can teach them. And I've been able to use that to build quite a big team now. And working for Honeywell, which I've worked for now for about 15 years or so. I came down from Redditch in the Midlands down to the Somerset Centre, to the southwest of England, which is where I'm based now, as an engineering manager, and then I got into systems. So this is not just one product design. This is a combination of design, and you have to figure out how each of the products interacts with another product in the system in order to provide that overall functionality. And that's a different way of thinking. It's looking at any object and thinking, okay, I put this input in and I get this output out. But what goes on in the middle of it? And that's really a system. That's what you put electricity in one side and you get, I don't know, sound coming out the other side. Something in the middle deals with that, and that's really a system. And it's having that mindset of how each individual component part interacts with the next one. The downside, of course, is I'm more hands-off. So I don't do the practical stuff now. I don't do the calculations. I don't do the drawings. I manage people, and it's really frustrating when people ask me, what do you do? The first word I say, well, I'm an engineer. I don't say I'm a director of Honeywell. I don't say I'm an engineering manager or whatever. I'm an engineer, and I'm just part. And now I'm a cog in that whole organization. I do my responsibility, or my duties and responsibilities for the whole organization to work smoothly. Honeywell is a massive company. It's over 40,000 people globally. It's a US corporation. And they have a number of sites in the UK, aerospace, being the biggest, and Yeovil is where we're based in Somerset. But we have, lots of other companies, and part of my experience, my story, if you like, was doing things. In my view, I was doing things right. There's a right and there's a wrong way of doing it. A manager of mine way back used to tell me, well, why spend time doing something wrong, Dave, when you could do it right? And that kind of stuck with me. But he was right. There is a right and a wrong way of doing something, and to be trained how to do something right, to understand the theory, to understand why you're doing something, it provides, it bears fruit, should we say? So I got given the opportunity to be promoted from an engineering manager to an engineering director, as we formed a European organization. So again, this is a US corporation. It was very US, United States centric. Everything was America. So it was a bold move for somebody to say, actually, we need a European footprint, because there's a lot of customers, a lot of aerospace customers in Europe, Airbus being the biggest, of course. And I got the opportunity. I interviewed for the job, and I got it. And we spent a lot of time in the base which we set up, which was in the Czech Republic, constantly traveling to and from. But I represented all of the systems engineering activity, mainly in Yeovil, but on a European footprint. That then, and this is where coincidence and fate kind of comes in. I'm an opportunist. If something is interesting to me, I'll go for it. I've never had a fixed career path. like I say, when I left school, I was shy. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. Even I wasn't particularly good at maths. Here I am, an engineer, and I got up an opportunity to then represent Honeywell as a formal director. So not this is my day job is an engineer, but I'm also a formally registered director at Companies House in London for Honeywell UK. I'm also a director of Honeywell BV, which is the Dutch partnership of Honeywell. And I haven't been trained for this. I'm an engineer. I do technical stuff, but throughout, I know the difference between right and wrong. I won't sign off something if I know it's wrong, and that's important as well, because my signature on something allows that product to go onto an aircraft and to fly. So the responsibility of that product, and making sure that it works properly, and making sure that we've tested it and that we've verified that it performs as we expect it to, is very, that's a lot of responsibility, because if it isn't, if we falsify test results, if we say, I know it failed, but I'll say it's passed, and it goes and it fails on the aircraft and people die, it doesn't get any more serious than that, does it? So those sort of levels of responsibilities is part of my role, but it's part of my personality, that I won't do something that if I think it's wrong. So I now, I sit on board meetings every quarter, and we talk about finances, and we talk about risks, opportunities, and that feeds up into the larger corporate Honeywell organization, which is a global a global concern. So I think for the majority of you guys, if you're at all interested in engineering, if you're at all interested in aerospace, then apply to companies, write to companies, ask them about their apprenticeships. The key thing, I interview a lot of people for engineers' jobs within my organization, but I also support other people who are interviewing for different functions. And one of the key things I look for is a candidate who has done a little bit of research. I didn't have the luxury of Google, of the internet. It didn't exist. It's only been around for 20 odd years, So anybody who's taken the effort to write a letter to a company, it doesn't take that much more of an effort to Google that company, to find out what's that company doing, what's its product range, who are its customers, and that gives you two things. One, it's a great positive message to the interviewer that you've gone to that level of effort, but it also gives you that something to talk about in an interview. When a bit like I am now, I'm talking to you guys. I can't see you, but I've done a little bit of prep, and I'm able to talk about stuff. Turn the tables around. You're now coming to me to interview for a job, and I like to know that you've done a little bit of research, because there's something you can ask questions about. There's something I can provide answers to. It engages in a conversation, and part of that then teases out, okay, what sort of personality are you? Are you going to fit in this sort of organization? It's important to do that research. So just a tip there. Yeah, it's disappointing. I mean, some of the jobs I wrote to, and I'm going back many years, so there was no Google, as I say, so I could only read what I read in the press or what I'd been able to find out. But some of them I just got by reputation. I thought, I love that company, I'd love to work for that company. They rejected me. It hurts a little bit, but you got to move on, haven't you? You got to then, okay, well, what's the next one, and what's the next one, and something good will come around, and it did. As I say, I didn't have a fixed career plan that I was ticking off as I went down each step. It was kind of opportunist, and you just got to move on. It can be tough, but you do toughen up yourself. You can have so many rejections, and then you'll get a positive. So you've just got to keep thinking for that next one. I personally didn't. I guess I had a support network around me. I was encouraged by my parents to hey, move on. It's their loss, sort of thing. And especially, as I say, I wasn't the most confident of people either. So it did kind of hurt a little bit. I don't have anything other than the cliche, I'm afraid. But I didn't read any self-improvement books or anything like that, I'm afraid. I just kind of cracked on and just wrote, the next, and I would be sending out 4 or 5 letters at a time.
Yeah.
I think the worst one was if the company didn't respond. I think that's really poor. And if I interview anybody, if they don't get the job, then I always make it my point to phone them back up and explain why. You need to improve in this area, or you didn't quite understand this bit. Give them that feedback. That's important.
Yeah.
And I think there's more of that around these days as well. Not at all. I was interested in doing the practical stuff, and I have this thing about I can kind of see the process. If I can see an inefficient process, I go into some shops sometimes and I think, this is damn inefficient. I'm just, I have to go to this person, then I have to go to that person, and all I want to do is buy the product. And I can see people working as a team. I have that ability to see where it can be improved, and I'm always thinking about, well, if you did that out of sequence with this, then it's not going to work. So you need to be doing this, and then you need to do that, and suddenly you've created a more effective team, and the team enjoy it. So I have that sort of ability, and I guess that's in hindsight, that's a foundational stone about, to build from a leadership perspective. But no, I certainly didn't. I didn't have a plan to be where I am now, and I have to pinch myself sometimes. How did I get to where I am now? I think it's twofold. I think yes, I liked, as I said, Airfix models. I used to build Airfix models, because there was no such thing as a computer game other than the little tennis game that was, a bit retro. But I also learned a lot from my earlier managers as well, and the style that I have now. It fits with the way I am. It's my character, but it's really I can kind of track it back to my first 3 managers. They were relaxed. They were in control. They didn't get upset. They didn't shout and rant and rave when things went wrong. And nor do I. I work with people that do, but personally I don't. But I think it's just picking up experiences from various people to see what fits with your personality. Take it, do it. Go that direction. But and following instructions, I have a reputation for pragmatism, shall we say? That in aerospace, it's extremely rigid. There are rules and regulations, and there are legal requirements as well. But then you can dig down, and we've got a lot of processes. We've got a process for absolutely everything. But if you were compliant to every process, you couldn't do anything. They don't knit together. So you have to be pragmatic. You have to make the right decision. You have to take risks, but you take calculated risks, and we do a lot of risk management within aerospace as well. If this were to happen, then what would be the occurrence, and what's the mitigation? How do you prevent it happening in the first place? That's a core part of aerospace design. So it's very process driven, very organized in that regard, but you have to be pragmatic. And the way I've done it is I've just kind of picked and chosen from people I've worked with over the years, and copied, what works for me. I'm quite competitive. Those that know me would say I'm probably extremely competitive. I like to win, not at any cost, but I would drive myself to improve. Like I say, I wasn't the star pupil at school. I could probably name half a dozen or more people that would constantly, A stars, A's, and 10 out of 10s and all the rest of it. I wasn't that person, but I was competitive, and I figured that, okay, the more work I put in, the more study I do, the better I'll get. And it was, in terms of self-improvement, that's kind of getting down to it now. That's what drives me. I've got 2 teenage children. I got a son and a daughter, and I can be a little bit too competitive sometimes. I have to do that in measured values. Otherwise, what I'll do is I'll turn them off, because I like to win. So I have to measure it. But I'm not sure if I answered the question there. I kind of waffled. Me, I'm kind of in it for the long haul. So a lot of people think they can have success tomorrow. You've got to do the legwork. You've got to do the foundation. You've got to build your own experience. It could take 3, 4, 5 years to be that person. And then you think, well, I mean, for me, it was a case of, hang on a minute, I'm going around the boy again here. I've done this before. I don't want to do it again. I'm always doing it blindfolded. When you get to that point, start looking, because that's the only way you'll grow. And you've got to kind of think, okay, and you have to be bold. I mean, like I say, I took a big risk to taking a cut in pay. Okay, in hindsight, it wasn't a huge cut, but when you're down to your last 50 pence at the end of the week, it's you've got to make sacrifices there. But I think for me, it's putting the investment in to yourself and doing the best you can and driving yourself to be the complete person, and then expand to the next level and take the opportunities where they come across. And like I say, I'm an opportunist in that regard. If something comes along and I'm interested in it, then yeah, I'll go for it. I might not get it, but I'll give it a crack. And I'm not looking at different jobs every other month. I've been in this role now for 2016. So this 5 years gone straight away, and it's gone like that. But it's 5 years, and I've gone to that next level up as well, and that's not me. It's a little bit too ruthless for me as a person. So I'm down a level from where I was back in probably 2018. Still the same sort of roles and responsibilities on the day-to-day basis, but I'm a slightly I'm at one level lower, and it was just an organizational change that actually benefited me, because it's when you get to the real top, it's a bit ruthless, and I'm very much an interactive human. I don't have that ruthlessness in me. So I'll be quite honest with you, I did struggle at that level, but I've got that nice mix now. I can get involved in the technical stuff. I can support my team, and understand their technical challenges and call upon my experiences to build them up and coach them and develop them. That I love that. That works. It's a win-win in that regard. There are points. There are points of the job that yes, you've got to make hard decisions, and as an engineer, we're kind of trained to make decisions based on facts. Sometimes the facts aren't always there, so you've got to make a decision. It might not be a popular decision, but the way I do it is you explain the circumstance to the team or the individual or whoever it's going to impact. And explain the context of it, and generally speaking, that works. It works for me, as opposed to, let's say, a different trait of person who was just going to say, well, this is what I'm going to do, and I don't care what the consequences are. I'm just going to do it. I'm not that person, so I'm very much a person that would try and explain a situation, build relationships. We've got a very large contract at the moment with a new customer, based in the other side of Europe, and we've never worked with them before, but we built a good, strong relationship during the pursuit phase, and now we can have those difficult conversations, both technically, schedule-wise, cost-wise. So there's two elements to leadership. You can be a man. You can be a team leader of people, and organize a team where you have to make tough decisions. But like I say, if you can explain those, and it's all about good communication. I've never, I can't recall, I've never been a the desk thumping person who's, this is what I'm saying is right and you've got to do it regardless. I've never been. I've worked with people like that. I've worked for people like that. It doesn't work. It's not effective. It's in my view, it's a failure of management if the person can't control themselves to get across a structured argument or discussion point to make a decision and achieve an objective. Yeah. Then the advice is, if you've got that heart and that enthusiasm and that energy, project it. talk about it. There's nothing worse than somebody coming in and almost being scared. It is a frightening experience, don't get me wrong. But the only way to get better at interviewing is to do lots of interviews. It's like being, standing on a stage. I did a site level, we call them town halls, but it's basically a big communication exercise. And it was in the Oval, and as a management team, we were the first into this auditorium, and we were sitting at the front. We were just checking our notes, and everybody was coming in behind us and filling all the chairs up. You could kind of hear the buzz. Didn't really turn around until it was my turn to go up onto the stage. And I walked onto the stage, and the breath just got drawn out of my lungs. It was like, oh my God, what have I done? And that was scary. But you can, if you keep doing it, you become tough to it. And I think it's the same for interviewing. Like I say, you write off and get applications. You might get rejected, but hey, you'll learn from that. I think that the important thing is to try and get that feedback as to why have you rejected me. I got no problem people phoning me up to say, hey, why didn't I get the job? Usually I phone them first, but if they've got to me before I've got to them, then hey, I'll have all the points that I've taken on during the interview, and I'll point them out when I've scored it, against the other competitor. Maybe they might be good, but not as good, and that differentiation is important to feedback. But I think if you've got younger people that have got enthusiasm and energy, then it's getting that across to the person who you don't know. You've got a half an hour or an hour to sell yourself, and to have questions and answers and have an active conversation about something is those are positive points that I look for. I don't think it was a pivotal moment. I think it's been a gradual change, albeit one of the key steps was going from school to being an apprentice. You're now in a group, and it was a 5-year apprenticeship. So we were coming in at 16 and a half. And we were working with the older apprentices who were in their last year, who were 20, 21. You learned a lot from them, life skills. Plus, it was a pretty heavy engineering company. It was, for proper engineering, as we used to call it, big heavy stuff. It wasn't particularly clean. You had to learn quick, and that's, there's no room to continue being shy. There's no benefit in it, So I think it was a maturity. I think is more the question. I matured, and then you gain skills, and you gain a reputation for having those skills, and that builds your confidence. So, I think it was a gradual thing. It wasn't really a pivotal moment at all. I get nervous. I was nervous before this, but here I am chatting away. So,
having a good chin wag.
I think it's good to be nervous. It's good to be, have that little edge. It's important, because otherwise you become blasé and you can tumble. I would imagine that most of them don't know what to be when they grow up. I know my kids don't, and one's 15, the other one's 18. They still don't know what they're doing. So, for me, it is you keep studying as hard as you can, because the more qualification and the better the qualification, the more options you've got. You can make a choice in a few years' time. You can store that knowledge. You can't. You don't lose knowledge. You gain it. You might not use it, but you don't lose it. So study hard. If you don't understand something, ask the question. Reach out, as you said before. Reach out to the teachers. Reach out to the head of year. Ask your friends. How do I do this? I don't know how to do this. Where do I find that? I don't know where to find it. And just work as hard as you can, and don't expect reward tomorrow. I think that's something I've learned, that, and maybe I was guilty of it myself. I don't know, but I just can't remember. But don't expect results the day after. The progression to this sort of position isn't overnight. Some people will get to this position a lot earlier than I did. And fair play to them. They were probably the A stars and the A's of the world, and I wasn't. I'm more of a, I wouldn't say plodder, but I'm more comfortable if I've got a good foundation behind me. And it's the same when you're at school. Make a strong foundation. Study. Do another key point. Don't just do enough. If the homework is, explain this, provide me an essay on this particular subject. Don't just write, I'm up to 100 words. I'm going to stop now. Go the extra mile. There's so much information at your fingertips now through the internet that I never had. We used to have to do paper researches in libraries and stuff like that. You used to have to apply, send it off. Maybe a week later, a book or a booklet or a pamphlet would arrive, and you'd have to read through that. My God, it's instant now. So why not use it? Why not impress the teacher by saying, actually, yeah, this is what you asked for, but this is what I've done. Go the extra mile. I think would be my